Banking began with goldsmiths. Due to the nature of working with gold, the smiths had a secure way of storing it. People rented out places in goldsmiths' safes and other places as a place to store their gold. In return, they received a ticket which they could use to redeem their gold at any time. Now, when they started doing this, two things happened. First, goldsmiths discovered they didn't need to keep all the gold in their safes. It was discovered that it was not likely that people would pull out all their gold all at once, so it was safe to lend out some of the gold at interest. When doing this, they could keep only a fraction of it in reserve. Second, the tickets became exchanged as currency rather than gold coins. When people exchanged those tickets, the goldsmiths or a single goldsmith would just transfer the ownership of the coins. The paper itself became a currency. In a sense, it became as good as gold. This is what banking is about. Investors make a choice: liquidity and ability to get money right away, or returns, using your money to get more money like an investment. It's a trade off. Cash in your pocket to move quickly but no profit. To be tied up in investment to make you more money. When it's invested, you can't get the money easily in an emergency. This is the beauty of banks. They partially remove this trade off. The bank takes the deposits and invests them in businesses, mortgages, or whatever. So depositors can get interest while getting and maintaining their own liquidity. In capitalism, banking is good for bankers and people, if you agree with capitalism. It allows it to function. The thing is, it depends on depositors not wanting all their deposits at the same time. If for some reason they do take out all their money at once, the bank will be in trouble. When it doesn't have the money, it has to sell off its loans and assets in order to deliver it. If bad enough, they will have fire sales that could cause the bank to go bankrupt. What would cause so many depositors to take their money out at the same time? The fear that the bank might be about to fail because so many people are trying to take their money out. Banks have this inevitable risk of happening, and it can spread to many other banks, and the fire sales can reduce the value of each other's assets, creating financial distress. Banks used to be leveraged enough to deal with these situations to the point of preventing this self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, what changed? There was two things that did to help prevent this for the 1930s. First, banks had large, massive buildings, cathedral-like buildings that screamed a solid fortress. The look itself gave the appearance of infallibility. They also had capital ratios, where the value of their loans comprised 20 to 25% of their deposits. This way, they stood a good chance of paying back all their deposits in full. By contrast, banks before the 2008 collapse had capital of only a few percent of their assets. Even small losses could, in terms, break the bank. Second, they created the lenders of last resort, institutions that could advance funds to banks in a panic, ensuring that those people withdrawing cash could get it. In England, the Bank of England fulfilled this role. In 1907, J.P. Morgan made up a plan on the spot, but he can't always be around, so they made the Federal Reserve. But by the time the 1930s rolled around, this was simply not enough. In 1933, they created the Glass-Steagall Act, which created a ton of levies against financial floods. It created the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which guaranteed depositors their money. It also limited the amount of risk banks could take. It was necessary because of the moral hazard that was created by the insurance of deposits. In the 1980s, deregulation began and showed how much this moral hazard was a problem. Banks were not allowed to use deposits to speculate in stocks or commodities. They couldn't even do it in the same company. Banks could only risk on loans. This meant that regular banks and investment banks were made completely separate companies so as not to needlessly risk people's bank deposits. As a result, we had a long period of quiet and relative stability until Ronald Reagan in the 1980s. Ronald Reagan led the right-wing charge against, frankly, everything: deregulation of oil, food distribution, and natural gas. Economists celebrated this, claiming that it wasn't necessary. These regulations were Stone Age and antiquated. This created great efficiency in operation, so it wasn't seen as, so bad. Monetary reform was kicked off by Jimmy Carter, who put through the Monetary Control Act of 1980, which ended the block on certain kinds of banks from paying interest on many deposits. Then Reagan did the Garn-St. Germain Act in 1982, which relaxed all kinds of loans banks could kind of the kind of loans that banks could make. What happened now was glorious capitalist competition. It didn't make banking more efficient, it made it more risky. Banks began to seriously compete for depositors' cash. Not only those who made the riskiest of loans could afford to pay the most competitive rates. Ending restrictions on interest rates are what made these loans more attractive. They could now loan to customers who promised to pay a lot, but might not be able to honor their promises. The true magnitude of risk came about when the rules that had limited loans to particular areas of business and individuals was loosened. As you can guess, this led to too many risky loans that hurt the banks. They made this up by loaning from other banks. This made all the different debt problems, like all the other made it the problem of all other banks as well. This integrated, all the debts. Now, but the final blow came from Bill Clinton, who eliminated the Glass-Steagall Act, which separated commercial and investment banking. At this point, profits of investment banks skyrocketed to astounding new heights, driven by the profit motive. Commercial banks wanted in on this. Thus, they began taking the same risks, placing the entire economy in risk. The separation between investment banking and deposit banking was obliterated. Well, you can obviously invest a lot more if you can use people's physical deposits to do it. Essentially, the profit motive drove the deregulation of everything that was set up to protect ourselves from this inherent instability and risk that is capitalism. Even when you do regulate capitalism, it remains the same system with the same goals and tremendous flaws. Capitalism cannot be reformed. It always remains the same.